But me, your man, Louie T, welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, I didn't think we would get any news until post-combine. I was wrong. Now, I was surprised about the cut of offensive tackle Charles Leno Jr., and I'll explain why here in a second. But I was not surprised about them cutting Logan Thomas. Now, for those of you who don't know, Washington has moved on from both tackle Charles Leno Jr. and tight end Logan Thomas. Both of these moves were expected in some degree. Thomas was a definite. Leno was a little bit dicey for me, and here's why. The age and the performance suggest that he should be moved on from, and I thought that this would be done at a later date and time if it was going to happen. Now, I didn't look at the contractual situation to know when bonuses and things of that nature would kick in. And a lot of times there's a roster bonus that kicks in at the start of the new league year, and X amount of dollars kicks in if you're on the roster by said date. And so if you want to get out of that, if you don't want to have to pay that money, you have to make the cut prior to that date, obviously. I think there is a date coming up that Washington would have been on the hook for a certain amount of money. With Logan Thomas, I know that money was like a $600K roster bonus that they didn't want to be on the hook for. He was due to make $6.5 million this year. We knew he wasn't going to be here to collect that $6.5 million. And his play and his ability to stay healthy and all of those things did not suggest that he would be here once this new staff came in. So Thomas wasn't a surprise. Leno, on the other hand, was a surprise for me because I thought that he could be cut if they were able to get someone in free agency and the draft. We don't just need a left tackle, we need a right tackle too. And so right tackle was already an issue going into the offseason, one that needed to be addressed. And unless you could know for sure that you were going to have an alternative at left tackle, you didn't want to create a hole there until you already had a solution to that problem. So in my mind, I thought they were going to go the Morgan Moses route. Remember when Rivera and company first got here and they didn't cut Morgan Moses until after the draft, after they got their hands on Sam Cosmi, saw him at OTAs and realized, or minis, the rookie minis, and said, okay, we got ourselves a guy. And then they cut Morgan Moses, right? That's what I thought they were going to do. Make sure that we have a replacement for him, and then you can move on from him. This tells me that they're definitely going to attack the tackle position aggressively this offseason. They don't have a choice. We don't have a starter on the roster right now. If you're looking at things objectively, we don't have a single guy that you feel comfortable. And I especially don't feel comfortable with any of the guys that are currently on the roster right now because Cornelius Lucas is a free agent as well. And we damn sure don't want to see them trot Andrew Wiley back out at right tackle. So now you need 2 tackles, 2 defensive ends, etc., etc. There's a long list of items that are needed, and this is going to bring the trade back crowd to a crescendo, right? They're going to get even louder now. You need so much stuff. We're going to see. This is why free agency coming first is important. Again, I don't know if they're going to go after anybody. This changes, some of the philosophical approaches of maybe the offseason, particularly free agency. This is a deep, class of offensive linemen. But again, how aggressive is Washington going to be in the draft? My assumption now is I was thinking you could, you could draft a guy in the second round and then kind of push down tackle maybe a couple of rounds down the road into day 3. I'm thinking you got 2 3s, 2 2s, and one of each of those rounds needs to have a tackle selected in those rounds. At this point, if you don't attack it in free agency, obviously. And there aren't a ton of options that will make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Mike Owinahu, it might be one of the only options that I see as a potential right tackle that I would feel comfortable with. I don't love him, but it's better than nothing, right, going into the draft. But we'll see. Now Washington has roughly $90 million worth of cap space. I'm assuming they're cutting Charles Leno Jr. right now and not designating him as a post-June 1 cut, if they designate him as a post-June 1 cut, then they save $11.5 million as opposed to the $7 that they would save if they cut him right now. So I don't know if they're going to make it a post-June 1 designation cut, which would save them an additional $4.5 million. That would be the smart thing to do. If they want to do right by Charles Leno Jr., they could cut him right now. He's reportedly having hip surgery. I don't know if that factored into their decision-making process or not, but they moved on from Charles Leno. We knew this was a possibility. I am surprised. I'm not going to lie to you. Not because of the performance, not because of the age. All of those things suggested he needed to be moved on from. I thought they would wait until they had a replacement. It's almost like, you know, I always tell the youth of America, don't quit your job until you have another one already in place, already, you know, set, and you have a start date. You don't quit your previous job until then. So I thought they would kind of go with that same moniker, that same mentality and mindset of, we're not going to move on from him and create another hole unless we know we have a resolution to that problem in place already, which tells me they're going to be super aggressive, which they need to be anyway, but they're going to be super aggressive this offseason when it comes to the offensive line, but the tackle position in particular, because we don't have a starting tackle on the roster right now. And so I wouldn't be shocked to see them go out in free agency and get a guard and a tackle, and then double down in the draft and get another guard and another tackle. But right now, for me, it is imperative that you get at least one starting offensive lineman in free agency. And I think the best position to go after is guard. And if you can do that, then you will solidify the two guard positions. And then I think you've got a starting center potentially on the roster already in Ricky Stromberg. And then we will have to be aggressive in the draft at the tackle position. And we'll see what happens. There's going to be a tackle available when we select with our first pick of the second round. There will be a tackle available. And I think that's probably going to have to be the pick there. And then after that, you can kind of go with, you know, whatever it is the best available talent on the board. Moving on from Logan Thomas, not a surprise. We were going to need a tight end anyway. I suggested Noah Fant in free agency. That would take that need off the board in the draft. There are some tight ends that potentially, and we'll get a look at them today at the combine in particular to see some of the athletic profile of some of these tight ends, but there are some tight ends that I am intrigued by in the draft, but I don't know if we'll be in a position to draft some of those tight ends, obviously. And so it feels a little dicey moving on from Charles Leno, not because of his play. I wanted him gone. I think he was a great guy in the locker room. You know, he was very outspoken, told it like it was. I appreciated that. He was a great guy in the community. He was one of the Walter Payton Award candidates for this team and nominees. So he's a guy that was very, very outspoken, as I mentioned, in the locker room, but also very outgoing in the community. So he'll be missed from that standpoint, but from a play on the field standpoint, he was a guy that we could have probably moved on from a year ago, you know, but here we are now moving on from Charles Leno, and it creates yet another hole on a roster that is already looking like Swiss cheese as is. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do. I don't think this changes the philosophical approach at 2. I know this is going to send some people into a tizzy thinking, hey, we got to trade back. We got to get more picks. We got to fix this thing because we don't have any tackles. I still think you take the quarterback and then you go from there. And as far as Logan Thomas is concerned, that's not a surprise. We knew that was coming. I'd already in my mind already moved on from Logan Thomas. I had not moved on from Charles Leno because I wasn't sure that they were going to do that, but they've done that. And so now they've got some work to do. But I trust the process, and I definitely trust Adam Peters and company. This is the right move, moving on from him. You just better have a plan in place. That's all. And if this were the last group, I'd be nervous right now because they never had a plan. This group, I trust them, and I'm going to give them every opportunity to show why I have blind trust in their ability to get the job done. So, again, We're going to see what happens. I'm excited that they've cleared the deck essentially on the offensive line because it needed to be cleared. We don't need any more guys that are past their prime. We don't need any more guys that are retreads from somewhere that failed, that, you think you can revitalize their careers. We need fresh bodies. We need guys that are proven elsewhere that, just didn't get paid where they were and are looking to get paid here. Or we need guys in the draft that have talent, and now you bring this coaching staff on board to get the talent out of them, including some of the guys on the roster. That includes Braden Daniels, who they spent a 4th-round pick on last year. I said we don't have a starting tackle on the roster. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. Right now, my assumption is that we don't, and that's how I'm moving forward. And I'm assuming that we don't have any starting tackles on the roster. They need to fix that, and I assume that they're going to do exactly that, starting with free agency. If they don't do anything there, I'm not going to panic because this is a very deep draft class of tackles, and I assume they're going to go in there and double dip and get 2 of them, and those may be our starting tackles in the upcoming season. We'll see what happens, but nonetheless, Washington has moved on from Charles Leno Jr., saved anywhere from $7 to $11.5 million, depending on when they designate the cut for. If it is immediate, then it's $7 million. If it's post June 1, it's $11.5, and then they cut Logan Thomas, and that's going to save them an additional about $6 million or so, I believe, in cap space. I think it could be a little bit less than that, but ultimately, Washington wasn't hurting for the cap space. These moves were made strictly off of principle. These guys were past their prime. They weren't going to be a part of the solution moving forward and needed to be moved on from. These are all the moves that we expected to be made. I just didn't think they would pull the trigger this soon on Charles Leno without having a replacement already in place. But again, that means they're going to be super aggressive, I believe, this offseason in attacking this offensive line, which is what I think most of us fully expected them to be in the first place. Now they got to ramp it up. I kept talking about how you can't revamp this offensive line in one offseason. They don't have a choice now. They don't have a choice unless they're going to leave Andrew Wiley at right tackle, which I know they're too smart to do that. If you're going to move on from Charles Leno, then you're smart enough to move on from Andrew Wiley as your starting right tackle. So they're going to take care of all of this. And I'm just going to allow this thing to play out and watch it from afar and be, or not afar. I'm going to watch it very closely like a hawk and see exactly what they do. So I'm excited. I'm excited that they made the moves that needed to be made. Now we wait, we watch, we see what ultimately comes of these decisions that have been made. And I'm excited about all the young guys that are going to get an opportunity to play, At the tight end position, we're going to get some young guys in here, regardless of what happens. No more veterans taking up spots like Andrew Wiley, like Charles Leno Jr., like Logan Thomas, that were past their primes, that couldn't really help this team. No more Andrew Norwells or Trey Turner standing in the way and stopping us from finding out if young guys can play. And no more bad acquisitions in the offseason. Not every acquisition is going to work. Not every acquisition is going to turn out to be fruitful for this team. But the ones that we were making were dead ends from the minute that ink dried on the paper. So let's see what happens. I'm excited about this offseason. As I mentioned, it's a big one. And this move to move on from Leno makes it an even more dire situation on the offensive line, if it wasn't already dire to begin with. So I think this is going to send, as I mentioned earlier, those Sam Howell stands out there to another level, because now they're like, you don't need to draft a quarterback. You need to trade back, get more picks. And look, if we wanted to trade back, we could command a haul for the number 2 overall pick. But I'm not suggesting that you do that. The quarterback is the most important piece in the NFL, and we got a chance to get one. You take that guy and you figure out the rest of it. We got tons of draft capital. We got tons of cap space. They'll figure it all out. They'll figure it all out. But I love the moves. I just didn't think they would do it this soon. But the contract and win bonuses and things of that nature start to kick in might have really pushed them to have to make these moves a little bit sooner rather than later. And I got no issues with it. As long as they got a plan. And I trust that these guys have exactly that. So, what says you? Leave it down in the comment section. What do you think about Washington moving on from both Charles Leno Jr. and Logan Thomas? Can't wait to read your responses. Didn't see this one coming as we going into the weekend of the Combine. Thought this would be some post-Combine news, but again, the dates as the calendar turns to March might have fast-tracked a lot of these decisions. And so here we go. We're off and running. The offseason is really getting underway now. Let's do it. I'm ready. Bart Scott. Can't wait. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. See you guys next time. Have a good one. LouieT.